Welcome. Thanks for coming here. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Good? Great. So apologies. I hate standing behind a lectern over here, so I'm gonna walk a little bit. And this is meant to be a fairly interactive session, so we're gonna have some fun. So without further ado, my name is Stacey Chang. I'm the director of the healthcare practice at IDEO. And I know some of you are fairly familiar with what we do, but if you're not, I wanted to spend just a quick minute or two to explain who we are, so you have some context for what we're going to share with you. So just a few things about IDEO then. We are a design and innovation firm. We're based out of California, although we have 11 offices globally. And if nothing else, what you should take away from today is that we believe wholeheartedly in this notion of human-centered design, that if you actually design with your end user, your stakeholder, at the center of your attention, you'll likely come up with a much better output than if you didn't. We are almost 600 people globally now. We are a design firm and creatives at our core. Most of our, actually I'd say probably all of our senior leadership were designers, and that's how they began. 11 locations around the world, our headquarters in California, but very significant presence across the globe, and we've always been that way. And we've been around for about 30 years. So if you knew IDEO 15 years ago, we were essentially the preeminent design firm, product design firm. We designed some really pretty iconic things in Silicon Valley, which is where we grew up. So the first mouse for Apple, the first laptop, anything with a screen that folds over a keyboard, we own the patent to, the Palm 5. And so we cut our teeth on some of these really iconic technology products. And along the way, we developed this fairly interesting process that had us fairly consistent in our ability to deliver something innovative for our clients. And so our clients said, hey, you know, that process is pretty interesting. We typically ask you the first question, which is, how do you design this? This being whatever they happen to be interested in. A cell phone, a laptop, a barbecue grill, a medical device, you know, the interior of a car, you name it, we've probably worked on it. And they said, hey, you know, that process is pretty consistently successful for products. Could you actually apply that to a slightly different question, which is, what should I design? So I've got competitive pressures I don't know how to respond to. I have technologies that I don't know how to launch in the marketplace. I have an adjacent marketplace I want to move into. Could you help us use that process and figure out what we should actually design for those end users? And so, as is typical of IDEO, we said, sure, why not? And we did. And so slightly more than half of our work now is of the more strategic variety. And across the firm, I'll give you, this is the elevator pitch, I won't read it to you, but it's really simple. We really do three things. One, we figure out what matters to the end users. Then we actually can design a response in that offering to those end users' needs, whether that's a physical product or an environment or a software, whatever it happens to be. And then finally, we enable organizations to actually change so that they can do that more consistently themselves. So across the firm, we do a tremendous amount of work. We still do a lot of physical products, hard drives for Western Digital. We do a lot of design of environments, whether that's, you know, the courtyard hotel lobby design for Marriott, we're in a Marriott now, or, you know, the showroom for Prada in New York. We do a lot of environments design. Services, a lot of work for financial services. Bank of America, we design a lot of services for them. And then organizations, probably the most well-known is we helped P&G develop all of their innovation centers. That's mirrored pretty closely in our healthcare work as well. So on the product side, almost half of our work still is traditional, very hardcore product design. Designing, you know, kidney transporters, large organ transplant devices, everything from that to blood glucose meters to surgical instruments. We do strategies, you know, for Nike, for example. You know, they recognize that their ability to sell their product depends on people being active, and as the population becomes less active, they actually have to become advocates for people being in motion. We recently finished the reference design for the Federal Health Insurance Exchange, so as a function of Obamacare, you guys, there's something like 10 days now for the states to decide whether they're going to design their own health insurance exchange or they're going to use our reference design. And then for organizations, we work with most of the major academic medical centers in the US and then outside of the US as well, helping them design either their services, new protocols, essentially a response to the difficult times that we have in healthcare right now. So that's a very fast-talking intro to IDEO, just to help you understand the context from which we come. And so we approach all of this, our process is what we call design thinking. We certainly didn't invent the notion, but we've actually pushed it along quite significantly in the last decade or so. And what I'm hoping to do with you today is actually share a little bit about that process, and the philosophy behind it. But before I do that, I believe strongly in this notion of demonstration before pontification. So I could sit here and sort of talk to you about the philosophy. That won't be really interesting as a start. So what I'd like to do is have you guys experience that. So we're going to have a fairly interactive exercise for about the next 45 minutes. And it's going to ask you to do a bit of talking with someone, hopefully, that you don't know very well. So your first assignment is to find somebody sitting close to you. Feel free to move around the table. But ideally, someone you don't know very well. Take 2 minutes to introduce yourselves to each other. OK? Ready? Go. OK. So hopefully you've had a chance. Hopefully you've had a chance to at least understand who you're sitting next to and who your partner is. Is there anyone who does not have a partner? Anybody who walked in late who is not paired up with someone? Raise your hand. Everyone paired up with someone? Everyone have a partner for this exercise? Great. OK. So hopefully you got the message by email this morning. We'd like you to take out your wallet. This is not a hold-up. We're not going to rob you of your money. We're asking you to bring your wallet out for this exercise, and we'll tell you why in a second. If you didn't bring your wallet, that's OK. You can describe it, but it's best if you did. So anyone who's walking in, we're asking you to pair up with anyone. Anyone not have a partner? Over there. Very good. OK. So at your table, you should see a sheaf of papers that says a problem-solving approach to innovation. All right. So this is going to be a very fast exercise. We're going to make you sweat a little bit, and it's going to last for about 40 minutes. It's going to be very interactive. If you were expecting to sit back and listen for this first 40 minutes, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So we're going to do two things. This first exercise is your control. A problem-solving approach to innovation is typically how most of us work, right? I'm an engineer by training. I've been taught well by the scientific method. I understand how all that works. This is how a problem-solving scientific method approach to innovation typically works. This is going to be our control. So if you turn the page, we're going to ask you to do two things. Without interviewing your partner, we want you to design a better wallet for them. Based on what you know of the utility of a wallet and what you use it for, all that good stuff, you've got 3 minutes on the left there to sketch a few ideas for what a better wallet might actually be. Think about what you think the problems are and sketch a better wallet for the person you just met. Not for yourself, but for the person you just met. Sketch as many ideas as you have. If you've got one, great. If you've got two, even better. This is a competition. The more, the better. OK? Go. For those just coming in, please grab a packet at the back if you haven't gotten it already. You need a pair. We have an extra person over there. You want to join him in the back? So don't talk about your wallets just yet. That'll come. Yes? You're designing a better wallet for your partner, the person you just met for the last minute. So if you've got one good idea, that's great. If you finish that, sketch another one. The more, the merrier. You're going to have to pick your best one in a second. Got about a minute left. So for some of the stragglers, you may end up in groups of 3. That's fine. Yeah. OK, so you should have some interesting sketches. You have some hypotheses about what the problems are with wallets. You've sketched a couple notions. Take a look at what you've just sketched and pick one that you think is particularly compelling. You think it's sexy, it's great, you could sell it. Take that idea and refine it in the next panel. You've got 2 minutes to do that. Build it out in detail. Build a spec list, a specification. Think about how it's going to get used. Right? Detail it out. OK, 1 more minute. I told you we were going to make you sweat. Okay, go ahead and finish up any last ideas. Okay, so what you have here is the control. Go ahead and finish if you're still working. So this is based on your experience, your perspective. You've designed a solution on what you think the problems are. That's going to be our baseline. So turn the page. So we're going to now spend the next 20 minutes or so walking through a design thinking approach to innovation. And that begins for us with understanding who your user is. So your first exercise, we're going to give you a whole 5 minutes for this. All right? So you're going to go serially, one person and then the next. So of the pair, one of you is going to be the interviewer for this first 5 minutes, and the other person is going to be the interviewee. And then we'll switch roles. And I'll tell you when to switch. So you have 5 minutes for this first exercise, where the interviewer is going to basically ask the interviewee to tell them everything they can about why they have the wallet they have, why they chose the shape and function and color, what's inside it, why you still have a library card from when you were 12, why everything that's in that wallet is in that wallet, why it's organized the way it is, why they don't have one, why it's the size of a burrito. So we want you to basically play pop psychologist. So spend 5 minutes and have your partner explain to you everything that justifies why they have the wallet they have. Okay? So you have 5 minutes to do that. And while you're interviewing them, take notes about the things that are interesting, that are surprising, that are downright hilarious, because you're going to use that as the basis for design. You have 5 minutes, and then I'll tell you to switch, and then you'll switch roles. Okay? 5 minutes, start now.
Is it easy to get to business cards or the credit cards or anything like that? Oh wow, that opens up nicely. Okay. All right. Okay. So that was. So when you let me ask, when you put the press on this one about what you like about it, what you don't like about it, some challenges you see with it. Okay. So now if we were to look at you don't have to open it. You don't have to worry about it. Do you carry yours in a pocket or not? Do you put it in a coat pocket or a pants pocket? Front or back? Okay. See, mine is too big for me to put in my back pocket because I sit on this big key. I don't enjoy sitting on it. I don't enjoy sitting on something so big. So mine is always in my front pocket. And I put it in my front pocket. And it's somewhat accessible, but it's hard to get the stuff in here. It's hard to get the stuff in here. It's not operating very well like yours is. But I like how loose it is and how you can quickly it's real soft. Colors can draw, you can write notes. Okay. So we both agree that all is a two thing. Is yours too big because it's too thick? So ours are too big, but for different reasons. Did you, if you didn't
Go ahead and finish up. You should be switching roles now. So the interviewer becomes interviewee, the interviewee becomes the interviewer. You have 5 minutes to do the reverse interview. Okay?
what I end up doing is I take the points and I put them in a bowl when I get home. And then at some point, I put all the coins into a roll and give it to the bank. So I don't use any coins. And when I have to pay with cash, then whatever coins I get back, I just put them in my pocket and never use them.
Okay, your time is up. So at this point, go ahead and finish up your notes. Let me get your attention. So let me go ahead and finish up your notes. I know this is a fascinating exercise. If I could give you half an hour, I would. It's hilarious to get into the neuroses of your partner. But we're artificially constraining this because we only have so much time. So at this point, you should have a little bit of an insight into how crazy your partner is. You now know more than you probably wanted to know about them. And what I want you to do for the next 3 minutes at the bottom of that page is actually note things that surprised you, things you didn't expect. You probably have some notion of how you use your wallet, how you organize it. Your partner might have a very different notion. So what we want to spend the next 3 minutes is say, okay, what surprised me? What was really different about their usage pattern, about what they valued? Why do they have 15 pictures of their dog in their wallet, right? So just take notes about what you discovered that was something you didn't expect. Okay? Do that for the next 3 minutes. This is mostly a quiet exercise. One more minute. Okay, so you've made a bit of a record. I see some additional conversations going on. I think some of you have some suspicions that you want to confirm with your partner. That's good. Go ahead and turn to the next page. Okay? So this is probably the hardest thing we're going to ask you to do, and we're going to give you very little time to do it. So we're going to give you 3 minutes. At the top goes the name of your partner. And you're going to catalog 2 things on the left side of the page. The one is the functional needs. What are they trying to do with their wallet, right? Does their wallet look like a file cabinet? Are they trying to keep everything that they've ever owned in that wallet, right? What are they trying to do with their wallet? What does the function of the wallet mean for your partner? And then below that, we're actually getting to the emotional needs. Why do they do what they do with their wallet? Do you have a sense for, this is again where you get to play pop psychologist, but is their wallet a filing cabinet because they're afraid they might not have something when they actually need it? Do you have a picture of their loved ones because they want to stay close to them? Help us understand, take a guess at why you think they do the things they do with their wallet, what that reflects. Is it really interesting and fashionable because they're trying to make a statement, right? So what I want you to do for the next 3 minutes is catalog one, the things that they're trying to do, and two, the ways they want to feel. What are the emotional needs that underlie the way they treat their wallet? Okay? So you have about 3 minutes to do that. How do you spell your name? You say Autumn? Yeah. Thank you. You have about a minute left? You have about a minute left? Okay, so you should have a list of needs and a list of insights, or at least a start at understanding the emotional underpinnings for those functional needs. At this point, you're going to choose one of them. You're going to choose one of them based on this criteria. You're going to choose one that you think represents a lot of opportunity for new solutions, something that you could actually design around, something you think is kind of juicy, kind of interesting, maybe that lends itself to a lot of new ideas. You're going to choose that, and you're going to write that on the right-hand panel. And what you're going to do is you're going to focus on that as a design exercise for the rest of this exercise that we're having you do. Okay? So look at the list that you've created, pick one that you think is particularly juicy and that you'd like to work on and design for, and then put it on the right side. Okay? Okay, so go ahead and turn to the next page. So this is where you get to start coming up with new ideas. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to actually give you a whole 5 minutes. You're going to get a little less than that. But sketch, and this is important. We actually want you to draw. Doesn't matter if you're a terrible drawer, I am as well. But we want you to sketch 2 or 3 really radical ways, far out ways to actually meet the user need you just established. Okay? Whatever you think is work. Doesn't matter if the technology doesn't exist. Doesn't matter if there's no revenue model. Doesn't matter if it's made on material that doesn't exist. It's fine. But sketch 2 or 3 ways you think you could address that need. Go ahead. About 1 more minute. If you've got a couple good ideas, come up with another one. Okay, go ahead and finish up with that idea. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're actually going to share those ideas with your partner. So in the same order that you did the interviews, you're going to get 3 minutes each to share all the ideas that you sketched up, or at least the ones that you care to share, if you're not too embarrassed. Share those ideas, and what we ask of the person who's being designed for is give your honest and open feedback. Tell them if they completely missed the point, if you don't understand me at all. Tell them if you love the idea, and then give them suggestions for how to make it better, or to rethink entirely what they're doing. Right? The goal is to get really open and honest feedback, and the reason you're allowed to do that is because they've only spent 3 minutes working on this. So you won't hurt their feelings. Okay? So you've got 3 minutes. I'll tell you when to switch. Go.
but not much different.
Yes,
Right, so,
okay.
so this, if they were separated, they would allow them to stack well
Very
as
soon,
opposed to
you can
sitting on
put that
top
in
like this. Now it's getting so that's why I
But look, 10 years ago, everyone, or 20 years ago, everyone said, hey, in years to come, there will be these automatic ID scanning
so
technology.
it's that color.
It happen.
All right.
Please switch. Should be switching now. Viewer, you're now going to leave the other way around.
Now that folds differently. So this one folds in like that. Oh, I like that though. Oh. Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah? Have you seen something like that before? Have you seen one like that before? All right. Well, okay. Now, where would I put my? Where would I put this? It is, but that's interesting. What if it opened up? Like this, and so you could maybe put something in there, and then it would push it in this way, and it would all like a deck of cards, and it's like that. And then the back end could be continuous, and the bills would be in there. This is the bills in here, and actually, no, this is hard. Maybe like that, and so then so you have access to this card, these cards, and these cards, and then when you close it up, this is 1 for 2. I don't know how to shuffle that.
Okay. Not nearly enough time, I'm sure. So let me give you your attention. So I'm sure not nearly enough time to share the brilliance that you created in the 3 minutes that you had. But we're going to ask you to move on. So now you've gotten some feedback about how good, or maybe not how good, your designs were. And I want you to turn the page, you're going to spend the next 2 minutes thinking about the feedback that you got. What did they tell you? And what did you learn additionally about what their needs actually were? So you proposed some solutions based on needs that you thought that they had. And in their feedback, you should have learned a little bit more about them, how right you were. Maybe there's some nuance. Maybe they opened their wallet to share with you a little bit more that they didn't share previously. So in the next 2 minutes, I want you to catalog any things that you learned about your partner, especially about their needs, and then specifically about your approach to solving their needs, whether it was any good or whether there was room for improvement. Okay? So take 2 minutes to do that. Okay, so go ahead and turn the page. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do both of these exercises. So based on what you just learned, your deeper synthesis of your partner's needs, look at your problem statement, your original one, and redefine it if you think it's necessary. There's a little bit of nuance. Would you ask the question, the design challenge you put for yourself, would you create that, would you write that a little differently, right? Based on what you learned. So that's the first thing you're going to do. And then based on that problem statement, generate a new solution. Maybe it's an evolution of something you shared with them already. Maybe it's an entirely new solution because you learned something more about them. So take the next 3 minutes or so and complete these 2 panels. Okay? Okay, go ahead and finish up what you have. So if you'll turn to the next page, we want to think a little bit about this process that you've just been through. We've pressed you in half an hour to essentially do a design thinking process. And I want you guys to consider a couple questions. So the first 3 in particular. So take 2 minutes and jot down some answers to the first 3 questions in particular. If you have time, you can move on to the others, but please start with the first 3. And then we'll discuss. Okay, so let's discuss a little bit. So I'd love to hear from someone who really thought that their partner understood them well, that they really understood what their issues were and designed a solution that they were actually really happy with first time out. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think he has understood me on the first design itself because I told him about the requirements
Yeah.
of my wallet should have. It should carry the cards, it should carry the cash, and present wallet doesn't carry my mobile. So he made one pocket for my mobile and also a stylus so that I should not carry the notepad in my wallet.
Ah.
So two things I like most, the mobile carrying and the stylus he provided me, and this, on the back he gave me the camera hole so that I can take the pictures for the receipts. I don't have to carry the receipts also. So I like the design.
Wow. Brilliant. Well done. Party foul. I'm good. So who had a partner with a particularly odd wallet? Something that was really kind of strange. Yeah, in the back?
It's not so much the wallet itself, but you know, it came across as, you know, a burrito wallet.
Yeah. So Jared, can you hold up your wallet? Hold it up.
So fairly big, and he carries currencies from 3 countries.
Ah, interesting.
So that came across as particularly odd. But what struck me more was it was bulky. He realizes that it's bulky, and he sort of doesn't like that it's so bulky. But he says, you know what, I'm really happy with it. I'm not going to buy a new wallet. So I had to find another insight, another new angle, by which I can sell him new wallets. So I can talk to that very briefly. But
No, good. Thank you. So Tom allowed me to call him out too. Tom, can you hold up your wallet? So explain to us why you have a filing cabinet with you.
Okay, so every 3 or 4 months, I see my wallet is completely worn out. So I do my best to get some of the cards out of the wallet and get a new wallet. And then, you know, today's lifestyle is such that everybody wants you to carry their card. Grocery store, you know, you go to wine store, you know, Bottle King has their own, you know, your frequent flyer miles, you know, credit cards, your debit cards, you know, everybody wants, you know, your United Club card. So the thing is that if you don't carry all of those cards, you know, one way or another, you are going to feel that, okay, well, I could have saved some money over here, or I could have gotten some privileges over there, and I don't have a card. So it is amazing that even if you decide to throw out 25% of your cards every 3 months, you will gain another 25%.
So tell us about the solution that was designed for you.
Okay, so the solution that is designed over here is get rid of all the cards. Now how? So the solution that is designed over here is called electronic wallet, e-wallet. The technology is out over there. So what it does, do you want me to show a picture?
No, just describe it. That's okay.
So what it is that it is just like, you know, your security card type of thing. So it has an LCD window to select what card you want. Because actually, if you're looking into it, what is this card doing to you? It has 2 information in there. The one is the account number, and the second is your password or whatever is your PIN code over there. That's all it is. So in today's technology, why can't we have an LCD screen with the window that shows the image of the card? You switch, you know, with the button, you select, okay, Capital One Visa, you can't leave home without it. And you select that, and then the other, you know, the side of this, there are these programmable codes that appear. There could be, you know, on the LCD screen, the QR code appears that has that information, or a barcode appears. So it is a multifunctional one. So there is a magnetic strip, and that magnetic strip could be controlled through the transponder to give that information over there. So you have only this little device just like your driving license, but it is electronic. And you could put in front of the transponder, and it is RFID secure. So get rid of all the cars.
Spectacular.
And it has
Well done. Thank you for letting me call you out. So I'm curious, as you guys went through this process, what was the most difficult part of this process? Where did you really struggle? I'd love to hear. What parts were hard? Yeah? The short time frame, yeah, so we did that intentionally. But actually, you know, that's actually something we have to contend with too. We don't get to work forever, right? And constraints are useful. What else?
Well, my initial hypothesis of what would be his user needs was actually completely untrue. It took quite a while to understand what would be the insight, what would be the angle that could lead to a product opportunity.
And was it because it was as a function of the interview, or because you had your own ideas about what was?
Function of my own biases. I see a bulky burrito-sized wallet. I think I need to reduce bulk, but he doesn't care as a customer. That would not let him buy. That wouldn't make him buy a new wallet. Something else.
Spectacular, yeah. So if you compare the first design you did, which was the one based on just looking at what their wallet was, right? There's some assumptions and biases that you walk in with, and that's hard for us to step away from, right? Most of us are successful as we are because we've been able to depend on our perspective and our experience. What else? There's a hand over here.
When I was doing design, I again thought about some cards we had to carry. Like we have a lot of insurance cards.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take a picture of the card, have it on your smartphone, but it would be getting the doctor to accept the picture of your card rather than the physical card.
Great. So that's a really interesting constraint that's put on you by the system, right? While you have the information you need, there's actually a transactional value to that, which you have to address as well. Yeah?
It's difficult in the process, if that for me was the intent of the exercise was to customize for one unique user needs, and I always thinking of how do you scale this to a larger market and multiple people.
That's great. So what he's saying is, you know, he felt like he was designing for one specific person, but that actually if you're going to launch this in the market, you'd have to consider the needs of a much broader population. And so this is the beginning of the exercise, but the reason we had you interview a single person is because the real inspiration for new ideas doesn't come from looking at a market study of people and their wallets. It comes from actually understanding an individual and their very unique needs. And then the challenge for you then is to translate that to the broader market. Yeah? Question? Or comment?
I just was thinking that it would have been nice to, in some ways, have started designing a wallet first, just to think of the set of questions I'd actually want to ask for an interview. My interview was effective at getting to know my partner, but not at getting to know what they would actually want in a wallet.
That's a great piece of insight. So she said she would have loved to actually have started designing the wallet first to know actually which questions to better ask, right? So we'll share with you a little bit about one of our methodologies for actually doing that. So yeah, one more. Yeah, go ahead.
So the best insight I got is when she got out her iPad cover. So I actually focused more on the wallet when I was asking her about how she felt about it. But if I had asked her about other objects in her life, I would probably want a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. So she was saying she learned a lot more about her partner once her partner brought out her iPad, because that actually had some context, gave her some context for what her needs and probably what her priorities were. So we talk a lot about context as well. So those are good. So we're a little short on time. I would love to spend more time talking with you about some of this. But the reason we run this exercise is because I can pontificate and I can philosophize about design thinking, but until you've had a chance to experience it, you don't really understand why we did what we did. So now you've had a very artificially compressed exercise in design thinking, not nearly enough time as you would like to have had, but at least it gives you some context for what I'm about to share. So we'll return to the question then, what is design thinking? It's an approach to innovation, and it's just one approach. I want to be clear about this. I always come to these talks with a little bit of humility, right? There are many approaches to innovation. This happens to be one that's very unique to us and one that's worked very well for us, but it's not the only one. Design thinking actually considers three fairly important things in the development of any new offer, any new product, any new service, right? We say there's really actually three things that are necessary to find success. One certainly is the viability of the business. Is there a revenue model there? Are there enough users to buy? What's the margin? All that kind of stuff. The technology or the technical challenges to bring that thing to market. It's really a question about feasibility. But for us, for design thinking, we always begin with people. and whether what you're designing is actually either desirable or if it's usable by the end user. If you don't actually start with the people first, you might actually spend a lot of time building a business model or developing a technical solution that actually nobody wants. And so we always begin with people, but in the end, we actually consider all three. So the interesting stuff really often shows up in the intersections, and I'll let you read this, and I won't talk to the detail, but depending on where you're working, most of industry in general ends up working in the intersections, right? Emotional innovation is when people advertise to you around brands and things like that. There's not a lot of technology around it, but they're actually keying into the emotions of the individual and building a business revenue model around that. You know, functional innovation is sometimes about improving function, using technology. It may not actually have a huge effect on your revenue model. But for us, we're mostly interested in the intersection between all three, because that's where you really get truly innovative experiences. And almost everything you design, whether it's a product or a device or otherwise, is actually a component of a larger experience. And you should be considering that experience, that end user's experience, as the primary motivation for how you design. So we talk a lot about how you do design thinking. There's really 4 large components that you can use to affect the individual design: the tools, the processes, the roles, and the environment. And I'm going to talk through some of those examples. And there are 3 really important activities in design thinking that most of our clients find quite challenging. The first one is about how you get inspired. How do I come up with new great ideas? Do I just sit in a room and think really hard? How do I actually get that inspiration? How do I surface those ideas? How do I choose between them? How do I generate them? And then finally, how do I act upon them? If I've got a bunch of great ideas, how do I actually bring them to fruition? So I'm going to talk about these 3. And this is the process. This is sort of the overview of design thinking. You've done a little bit of this in your exercise today. You observed your partner. You told a story about what you thought you heard. You synthesized a little bit of what you learned, and then you brainstormed some ideas. You built prototypes. They're just sketches, and you got feedback, and that actually allowed you to actually advance your design quite significantly. So let me talk about inspiration. We use the world as a source of inspiration for new ideas, right? Not necessarily just validation. So, you know, a lot of our clients spend a lot of time doing quantitative market research. It tells you a lot about the characteristics of the middle of the bell curve, the 50% of the people that are in the middle. And that's really good for validating an idea. It's actually not very good for getting inspired, because people in the middle of the bell curve are actually a little bit boring. So we spend a lot of our times out at the beginning looking for inspiration, and we go out to people to do that. And then we'll evaluate. We'll build quick prototypes. We'll fail miserably. We'll get good feedback. We'll go back, and we'll learn again. And that iterative cycle can be really quick. And we have no issue with failure, because you haven't actually put a lot of effort to it yet, so you're not quite too wedded to the idea to let it go. So for us, insights born of observation are really the fuel for innovation. So here's a couple things that we've learned over the years. One, people do not always do what they say they do. They don't always do what they think they do. And they cannot always tell you what they need. That's really important. So observation lets you find all that out. One of the largest disciplines at IDEO is what we call human factors, or design research. And they're people with graduate degrees in sociology and anthropology and in psychology, right? And what they do is they actually get behind what we call the veneer, right? You can watch people in focus groups, you can ask them questions on surveys, and they'll tell you all sorts of things, and they'll say all sorts of things. And that's fine, but there's always this veneer, and what we're interested in getting at is what they actually think and feel, because it's there that we really begin to understand what's really driving their use, or their preferences, or their perspectives. And it starts with empathy. So I'm going to tell you about this story. So this is a woman. We were designing the voice over IP phones for Cisco probably more than a decade ago. And so we went out and watched a lot of people who use telephony, phones, a lot. And so we visited this woman. She's a travel agent. And we asked her, do you know how to conference people, 3-way conference people together on a phone? She's like, of course I do. And if you had left it at that, you would assume she knew how to use the telephone that she had in front of her. But we said, you know what, show us how you do that. So she dials up one of her clients on a phone, calls up the husband, and they're booking a cruise. So she calls up the husband, she said, just a minute, puts him on hold, on speakerphone, picks up another phone, calls the wife, says, okay, hang on, puts them both on speakerphone, picks up one phone, pancakes them. She's like, okay, good, I'm done, right? If you had asked her, she would have said, yeah, I know how to conference people together, but if you actually watch her do it, it tells you something else entirely. She understands the philosophical context of bringing 3 people together on a phone. She doesn't know how to use the phone at all. And so seeing things from your own viewpoints is really useful. This is a colleague of ours. A hospital hired us, and they said, we want to understand what our patient experience is, right? You know, when they come in and we greet them, and we give them questionnaires, and we talk to them, blah, 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 blah. And they like, we really want to change our patient experience. And we said, okay, that's fine. So we checked in one of our colleagues, and he had a check-in experience at the hospital. He carried around a camera with him. And this is what we showed them at the interim deliverable meeting. We showed them a 5-minute video of ceiling tiles. And every once in a while, you hear some disembodied voices come by, and they talk about you, not to you, or you have nurses come in and do something to you. And the CEO was furious. He's like, we paid you that much money to show me a picture of ceiling tiles? And we said, no, no, no. This actually is your patient experience. This is what your patient experience actually feels like from the point of view of the patient. He's like, okay, I get it. And we moved on. So when we do what we call human factors, we actually look at a lot of different layers, right? You can look at cognitive issues, emotional issues, physical, social, psychological, even cultural issues. We were doing a project in Japan around smoking cessation, how to get people to stop smoking. And we asked them, when did you decide to stop smoking? And one of the gentlemen looked at it, he's like, I never decided, I had to. I said, what do you mean? He goes, when my boss stopped smoking and started jogging, I had to go stop smoking and go jogging with him, right? So there's a really interesting cultural nuance just in that project. And so you actually have to consider a lot of different layers and actually to get to the core of what's driving people's behavior. So for us, getting out there, and out there means in the world, to sort of look and listen and try is really critical to understanding the needs that underlie new design. So we have a lot of different methods. We've actually even published a method deck. It's an iPhone app. You can also buy a physical version. Probably 7 years ago now. It's 50 different methods for how we actually get to the core of what matters to people. We published that to share that with the world, but also to force us to actually continue to evolve our methodologies. And I'll share with you a couple that are interesting. So there was a hospital that hired us to redesign the operating theater in their ER. And so we spent a little bit of time watching how people interact, you know, the nurses, the surgeons, the techs, the scrubs, everybody in and out, really kind of intense, as you would expect. And we said, okay, we can learn so much here, but we're also going to go out and look for an analogous scenario. And what that means is we ended up watching a NASCAR pit crew at work. Why would we do that? Because ostensibly, it's actually a very similar scenario. It's a team-based interaction, responding to emergency situations that they don't understand are coming in, and they have to respond effectively and efficiently with the tools that they have at their hands, right? And so we watched how they did their work, and actually one thing that we learned from them is that they actually have a lot of redundancy of tools. So if you ask a hospital administrator, I want 14 scalpels in the OR, all of the same kind. I want 2 of these sets of bandages and all this other stuff. They're like, why would I have that much redundancy of supply? It's really expensive for me. Like the capital cost is really high. But then you actually watch the OR at work, and the scrub nurse spends 15 minutes trying to find just the right scalpel because it's hidden away in some cabinet somewhere. And you realize that you can actually be much more effective by kitting tools based on what might be coming in the door. So from the pit crew, we learned they have a whole kit of tools for when a tire goes flat. And they just grab that kit. Flat tire kit, it's got the same wrench that's in another kit somewhere else. But you know, it allows them to be much faster. And if you consider the hospital environment, the OR costs something like, I don't know, depends on who you ask, anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000 a minute, right? So it actually costs you a lot less to have redundancy of tools and more capital equipment than it does to waste time looking for it. This is a project we did for an over-the-counter consumer health company. They were trying to redesign the experience of buying over-the-counter drugs for upset stomach and diarrhea and things like that. And this is an observation where we asked a young gentleman to actually come in and pick a drug off the shelf. And if you watch him, he's actually really nervous about doing it, because the last thing he wants to have happen to him is to be standing in his corner drugstore where all his friends might come through, and him standing in front of the shelf that has all sorts of things around diarrhea and upset stomach. It's kind of embarrassing, right? So in order for us to actually gather some inspiration, we went to this store in San Francisco. So Good Vibrations is a sex novelty store, right? And you might ask, how is that even remotely related? Well, it's actually quite embarrassing to walk into a sex novelty store and actually begin to question what products you need and how, you know, to ask about them. Like, you know, that's kind of embarrassing. So we brought our client there, gave them a scenario, and then asked them to go through an experience of actually coming to a solution for their need, right? So the scenario we gave them was her her spouse was underperforming in the bedroom, and she was going to the store to actually figure out how she could improve that experience. And if you ever have a chance in San Francisco to go to the store, you'll discover it's actually very different. It's not some seedy store on the corner of a neighborhood you don't want to be in. It's actually a really lovely retail experience. It almost feels like Bed Bath & Beyond or something retail, right? And they take a very different approach to it. So, as I mentioned before, we spend a lot of time thinking about how insights come from extreme users. And so we don't spend a lot of time actually talking to people in the middle. Not because we're not designing for them. Eventually, we're going to reduce the design to something that actually matters to the person in the middle. That's what you were asking about earlier. But we actually gather our inspiration by spending time on the extremes, because those people have needs that reflect needs of the people in the middle. They just happen to be a lot more evident, and they talk a lot, and they share a lot more about it because it's top of mind for them. So we were designing a bunch of kitchen tools for a European kitchen tools manufacturer. And one of the people that we went to see was a grandmother who cooks with her grandchildren. And she doesn't cook merely to create a meal, like most of us might. She does it because it creates an opportunity to have a connection among generations. And when the kitchen tool doesn't work for the kid and the kid gets upset and they leave, she loses that moment, right? So that's really inspiration for us to design things like a pizza cutter, for example, at the top. So that pizza cutter at the top doesn't look like a traditional pizza cutter. A normal pizza cutter has a handle off to the side. And for a little kid, it's really hard to apply enough pressure or enough force to actually get through a pizza. So we redesigned it so the kid can put all of their body weight directly over the blade, and we made it safe by covering it all. And by the way, that happens to work a lot better for every adult who can't get through a really thick Chicago deep crust, right? And so solving for the needs of people on the edges actually eventually gets you to addressing the needs that everybody else has in the middle. We do things we call unfocused groups. So focus groups are really good at asking, do you want purple or pink, a 3 count or a 4 count? But they don't really get at a creative solution. So for us, unfocused groups are about asking really great questions and then having the people in the session, whoa, that's a bit dark, help us create. So we frame the conversation and then we allow them to help us create. And so we'll do that in medical scenarios quite often too. So these are, the one on the right is a surgical tool for deep reading nasal passages for ENTs. And the thing you see on the left is our first prototype. What we did was, we were sitting with the surgeon and they're trying to explain to us how the product was too heavy and it kept trying to describe it. And an intern sat there and built a little prototype out of tape and paper clips and a marker and said, is this what you're talking about? And the surgeon said, oh yeah. And using that allowed them to actually be much more specific about their needs. And so we spent a lot of time actually co-creating with our customer in mind because they can help us move things along much more quickly. Something we call a wine and dine. So something that's pretty, I'm married to physicians, so I'm allowed to say this. You know, doctors are actually typically authority figures. They are actually, and they take that role very seriously because when they make a bad decision, life and death is in the balance. But they often won't tell you their workarounds or where they fail in the practice of medicine or surgery, right? But if you ply them with a little bit of alcohol and you put them in a room with their colleagues, they end up having a much more interesting and revealing conversation than they would if you were just interviewing them directly. So that's one of our methodologies. This is a intensivist explaining how she actually has to manage a patient when they come in. I love this picture. You actually have to look at the boy in the back to really understand what's going on. So especially in healthcare, we often bring the doctor and the nurse in together. It's the healthcare equivalent of the old married couple, right? Where you ask the husband a question, he tells you the official response, and then when he walks out of the room, the wife goes, let me tell you how it really happens, right? So we often bring doctors and nurses in together because the doctor will tell you the official version of what happens, and then when he leaves, the nurse will tell you, let me tell you how it really happens, right? So we like to do that because you get to see an experience from different perspectives. And then sacrificial concepts. So this lady over here was saying, hey, she would have loved to design something to actually think a little bit more about it and to be a little, and to get her mind wrapped around the idea. So what we do is we often build really low fidelity prototypes that don't take us a lot of time, and sometimes they're very intentionally wrong. And the reason for that is when we put it in front of an end user like a physician or a doctor or a health professional, they're not always extremely creative, but they are very, very critical, which is great. And human nature sort of lends us to that. And so physicians in particular tend to be really critical. And as soon as they get critical, they start helping us reveal what the real needs are. So we'll create a prototype that actually just pushes their buttons. It's too big or too bulky or too hard to use, really difficult. And they're like, you got it all wrong. Let me tell you how you really have to do it. And in that interaction, we actually divine a lot of learning. So synthesis. So once we've gotten all this really rich information, we actually have to make sense of it. And it's not just enough to gather those insights and then actually act upon them, because if you do, you end up with a bunch of really incremental and obvious ideas. So let me give you an example. We create more frameworks. This is an arc that you see drawn a lot at IDEO. And if we were doing a project for a company developing heartburn medication, we did a bunch of research, we did some observations, we had some insights, right? And you often heard people say, oh, I forget to take my medication, right? And that's why I'm not adherent to that therapy. In one case in particular, we interviewed this sort of the consummate sales guy, right? He had meetings all day long with clients. He had every meal with a client. And he was the guy who never forgot when your birthday was, what your spouse's name was, that your daughter rode horses for fun. And so when he told us, oh, I forget to take my pills, we're like, I think you forget in the same way you sort of forget to call your mother. There's some other underlying emotions that we have to get to, right? So if you had listened to him and he said he forgets, right? You design something that just reminds him. You design a reminder system that every day, at each meal, would remind him to take his pill. But that's not really getting at the core of the issue. What we really began to understood was that, when he had a meal with a client and he had to take a pill out to take it, what he was admitting to that person was, I don't actually have control over my own weight, right? Because I see all these media messages, Tums and other commercials that say, all of the people who have heartburn are the ones who are always overeating and they have no control over their eating habits, and they felt like they were that person. Every time they took that pill, they were admitting they were that person. So the thing that we ended up realizing is we actually have to alleviate them of that guilt first before they can actually move forward with their therapy. So that taught us to create something very, very different, which was a different kind of communications, marketing communication that says, hey, you know what? You're actually really normal. Actually, it's just a physiological abnormality that you have that allows sort of acid to come up into your throat. That's why you get heartburn. It's not actually anything to do with your own behavior. And once they could get past it, they could actually move on into their own therapy. So for us, frameworks express patterns, they express tensions, they express the journey that a user goes on. And each of those is pretty useful in actually creating a design challenge. So let me give you this example. So we work for Bank of America, and one of the challenging things in the US is Americans are really, really bad at saving money, and they feel really guilty about it, but they're also too lazy to do anything about it generally, right? So most financial institutions look at that and they say, that's something I can't solve for, I'll just have to contend with, I'll have to deal with. And so what we did was actually designed a program called Keep the Change, which allows people to spend, which is what they love to do. And then, so say you spend $3.50 on a cup of coffee, it rounds that charge up to $4 and takes that 50 cents and automatically puts it in a savings account for you. So what it does is it allows you to address that tension, which is that they really want to spend and save at the same time, and you allow them to do what they love most, which is spend and actually save at the same time, and alleviate them of the guilt while doing all the work for them, right? Those tensions often reveal opportunities that are really great. We talk about journeys. We designed an experience for Amtrak. They came to us and they wanted us to design the in-the-car experience. So we said, hey, you know what? The experience is actually much different. It actually expands much further beyond just the time in the train. It starts when the first time you interact and you buy a ticket all the way to the follow-up and things like that. So I want to go a little bit quickly because I realize we're pretty short on time. So we spend a lot of time brainstorming, and it's mostly in a circumstance that's different than what you would typically expect. So we have some really strict rules about brainstorming, and the one that's most important is the first one, which is what we call deferring judgment. So you've all been part of a brainstorming where someone invokes the devil's advocate. And the fastest way to kill the spirit of any brainstorm is to squelch somebody's idea immediately. So we choose not to do that. We have a very deliberate separation between generating ideas and then actually evaluating them. And so we believe in the power of the group. We don't believe that the myth of the lone genius is actually a good one. The best solution is not to put a really smart person in a room and have them think really hard by themselves. Actually much better when you get a bunch of people to create a bunch of ideas, because in that bunch of ideas will likely be a really good one. Finally, we'll talk about a little bit about prototyping. So you experienced this. We like the idea of building to think. Not thinking really hard to build something, but actually just building something so you can think a little bit more intentionally about what you're trying to build. So I could describe something to you like this, or I could build a prototype and have you try it, right? The prototype is a much better way to get feedback. People can see it in context. They can understand the use. They don't have to cognitively engage with the description that you have. This is a much better way to get feedback than it is to describe something. And so for us, it's about having people interact and think with both their head and hands, and then actually create a shared understanding among a team. When you create something, you actually have to reduce it to a different level of specificity than you normally do. So I'm going to skip through a couple of slides because we're pretty short on time. And I'm going to share this with you. So one of the things that we love to prototype is the space. You have to consider the environment in which your product is being created. And so we worked with Kaiser Permanente, which is a major hospital system here in the US. And what they've done is create a center where they can create all the environments in which their service is delivered, and allows them to test all of those in a real and a like-real environment before it actually goes out into deployment in their hospital, and allows them to get to all the nuanced understandings that they might actually not get to unless they had experimented with it first. So I'm going to leave with this. Design thinking is first and foremost a human-centered approach to innovation. And it's about three really big ideas: inspiration, ideation, and experimentation. Some of you will get a day to spend with us working on that, and I hope the rest of you will have a chance to chat with us about it. Thank you very much.